Thank you for joining me on today's video. In this video, we'll be focusing on usage rules. Gotransverse supports a number of different type of usage rules, including match all event usage rules, formula usage rules, and global usage rules. In today's video, we'll focus on the global usage rules. Global usage rules are modeled through Excel and uploaded into Gotransverse. They support a number of different functions available in Excel, but not all of the functions. The documentation describes the list of functions that are available. As you see down the list, there are about 50 different functions that you can use in your spreadsheet. If you use a function that's outside of this list, Gotransverse will not be able to convert this to Java code and the rating will not work. Let's take a look at how you download the rule and build out a rule. To download a blank usage rule spreadsheet, I go through the tenant and into my rating and billing. From there to usage rules, where I see a list of already uploaded usage rules, and then action and download. That will download a file to my PC and I can use that as a starting point for my rating. Let me bring that up and show you what that looks like. The downloaded spreadsheet is called Formula XLSX and contains some information that I'd like to take you through. First thing is, it has a list of all the fields that are available on a Gotransverse usage event. You can see a column for incoming event data, outgoing event data, the role result and role rate, and work area. We'll be looking at these in detail as part of the video, but I'd also like to point out the different tabs that it downloaded. Gotransverse allows you to use anything in a usage lookup table, rate table, currency conversion table, or billing account custom field as part of modeling your usage rule. These are already downloaded for you with some sample data, up to the first 50 rows of your usage lookup table or rate table respectively. Lookup tables begin with an L, rate tables with an R, currency conversions with a C, and custom fields with CF. I've highlighted some of the required incoming fields, including the SRID, the date, the unit of measure, and the amount. There may be other fields that you use within your rating model, such as the text 1 through 5 field or the number 1 through 5 field. You'll see a number of other fields that may be used, such as overwriting the amount, setting the service period as dirty for rewriting, or setting a custom error message. The two fields in columns D and E determine whether or not your rule worked. And you set that based on the values that you're going to put into columns G through X. That's considered the work area. This is where you come up with your formulas to come up with a rate that will eventually go into cell E2. This is a project billing use case. I've created two lookup tables, one called project billing, which contains project information, and one called roster, which contains the employees. What I've done is I've started to build out into my work area different fields. The first thing is I'm looking up the SRID. Now this SRID must exist in our project billing table. If it doesn't, we'll throw an error. For our spreadsheet, we can do testing. So we have the list of the values in our project spreadsheet, and you can see I've got 2 rows in there now. I've already modeled this usage lookup table to have the name of the project, location of the project, and then what's considered standard hours, where everything above that is overtime hours. As part of my roster, I have the employee ID, the name of the employee, his or her location, a standard rate, and an overtime rate. So how are we going to use these? Let's start by looking up the project. At this point, it's a very simple formula. It's a VLOOKUP. You're used to using that in Excel. It's the same formula. So if I take this value here, I'm going to go into this field and do a lookup, and you'll see what fields it uses. For example, I've copied the value up here, and I'm using that value there. If I have an incorrect value, you can see where I will not be able to calculate any rates. If the value is correct, then it will do the lookup properly. And you can see as I change the value, it will go back and do the lookups. This helps me test the spreadsheet and test the rating rule prior to loading into Gotransverse. Once I have the project lookup completed, I'm going to do some calculations on the time. Now, I've set this as a variable to say how many hours are in a day for a standard day versus overtime. And I can use that as part of my calculation. And you can see here where I've got a 13-hour day and 9.5 hours is considered standard time, while anything above that is considered overtime. Now you can see I've got my project lookup completed and my time calculation. I've gone the next step as well and done an employee lookup. That works exactly the same way, and it's using a separate lookup table called roster. So if my value coming in on text 1 is a different person, let's say it's number 2, you can see not only has the person changed, but his rate has changed. If that does not exist, although I can get the project and I can get the hours, I can't get the employee, and therefore will never be able to calculate the rate. So let's go back and put a good value in there and you'll see how the rest of this calculates out. At this point, the calculation is fairly simple. How many standard hours I have, times the standard rate, how many overtime hours I have, times the overtime rate, add them up for a total. I'm going to jump down and look at error management because one of the great features of this is being able to manage an error and show a custom error message. I've actually identified 3 ways you can have an error. The first is I can't find the project. Let's see if that works. If I put a bad value in here, these are an error. And if I look down here, I flag that as 1. And how did that work? By looking at the formula. If I have an error in this cell, return a 1. Otherwise, return a 0. Final thing I'm going to do is build a nice description. Remember, anything in column C goes back into the event, and that gets stored in Gotransverse. So if I look here, I'm building out a nice description. I'm saying based on this project, based on this employee. What is his rates? What are the hours? And you can see it's a very nice human-readable description that I'm adding to the record. I may add some other fields. For example, I'm sending text to back. I might want to use that in an invoice. I might want to use that in reporting. I can always throw in other fields. I can say that number 1 comes back to his standard rate. Number 2 comes back to his overtime rate. And I can set that up. Once I'm completed and I've tested all my different parts of the rule, the next step is uploading this rule into the spreadsheet. Let's get that ready to go and I'll be right back. Let's upload my usage rule. I go through the same menu and in this time I'm going to add a rule. The name of my rule is Project Billing. And I'm going to point at my upload. Once I feel confident, I'm going to set that as active. You can see that the project billing rule is now available and active. The next step would be creating a product for that. I've got a product container ready to go. There's nothing special about creating this, but at this point we're going to add the usage rule. I'm going to click on my subscription price, look at my usage rule, create a new usage rule. Let's call this project Billing. Give it the appropriate charge category. In our case, it's usage charge. We're going to start it at the beginning of this year, and it's of type global. Once I drop this down, you're going to see my project billing is available. I'm going to select that, hit Next. Determine if there is any recurring allowance. In my case, there is not. My unit of measure is hour. That's what I have decided, and I create the rule. This product is now available and I can add it to a customer and instantiate a service. Let's do that and then test it out. I've created my customer and then created an order. As part of the order, I'm going to set up the project ID. In our case, the project ID is going to be set within this gear as our service resource ID. You can see I've added project 1005. I'm going to complete the sale process by reviewing and confirming the order. At this point, I have a service instantiated on my account. Let's test this. I'm going to go to Usage. I'm going to create a usage event, and I'm going to use that same SRID. I'm going to give it a starting date of this. I'm going to set my unit of measure to hour, and I'm going to say it is 11 hours. I'm going to simulate this charge to see how it looks. You see what I've got is I've got that customer error message. And this error message says, I can't find the project because I instantiated the service, but I did not add the rate. Let's go back and add the rate. So I'm going to do that by going into another screen. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to go into my rating and billing. Pull up my lookup table and then go to project billing. In our case, you see I have one for project 1 and 2, but not 5. Let me add that. My project name is GT Implementation, and it's in Austin, Texas. And each day has 9 hours of standard, and I'm going to give it a starting date. And save that record. Let's go back to the other screen and see how that works. So I'm now going to simulate the charge. And you could see I don't have an employee. If you remember, I required an employee in field 1. And I'm going to add that now. Let me get a valid employee ID from my employee list. I'm going to simulate the charge, and you can see now I have 11 hours and I do have a rate. With that, I'm going to create the event and let's see what else happens. Let's create the event. Let's go back to my customer and quickly view his pending usage. Thank you for your time, and we hope to see you on another video. If you would like more info or a demo, please reach out to the Gotransverse team.